Jake Martinez gripped the control panel as his ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed across the cabin of the Horizon's Edge. The navigation system had failed 3 hours ago, and now he was falling toward a planet he had never seen before. "Come on, stay together," Jake muttered, trying to keep the ship level. He was supposed to be doing a simple survey mission. Check 3 empty star systems, collect data, and return to Earth. Nothing dangerous. Nothing complicated. The planet below looked like a giant crystal ball. Its surface shined with blue and white light that hurt his eyes. Jake had never seen anything like it in his 5 years as an exploration pilot. The ship hit the atmosphere with a bang that threw Jake against his seat. He fought the controls, but it was no use. The Horizon's Edge was going down fast. All Jake could do was try to find a soft place to crash. Through the spinning view screen, he saw mountains made of what looked like pure crystal. Rivers of light flowed between them instead of water. The whole world seemed to glow from within. Jake picked a flat area between 2 crystal hills and aimed for it. The ship bounced 3 times before sliding to a stop in a shower of sparks. Steam rose from the damaged engines. Jake sat still for a moment, amazed he was alive. He checked his systems. Life support was working, but barely. The radio was dead. The engines were completely broken. Jake was stuck on this strange world with no way to call for help. He put on his environmental suit and stepped outside. The air was breathable, his scanner said, but he kept the helmet on just in case. The ground under his feet was smooth crystal that felt warm even through his boots. In the distance, Jake heard sounds that made his blood run cold. Explosions, weapon fire, the high-pitched whine of energy beams. He was not alone on this world, and whoever lived here was fighting a war. Jake grabbed his emergency pack and started walking toward higher ground. He needed to see what was happening before he decided what to do. Behind him, his ship continued to smoke and hiss. The crystal hills were easy to climb. The surface had natural handholds that seemed almost made for climbing. When Jake reached the top of the first hill, he could see for miles in every direction. The crystal world was even more beautiful than he thought. Cities made of living light rose from the valleys. Bridges of pure energy connected floating platforms. Everything pulsed with colors that had no names. But the beauty was broken by war. Dark ships moved across the sky, firing red beams at the glowing cities. Parts of the crystal landscape were cracked and blackened. Jake could see explosions blooming like deadly flowers in the distance. A sound behind him made Jake turn around. Something was coming up the hill fast. Jake pulled out his sidearm, a simple projectile pistol that seemed very basic compared to the energy weapons he had seen. What climbed over the edge of the hill was not what Jake expected. It looked almost human, but its skin was clear like glass. Light moved under the surface in patterns that reminded Jake of flowing water. The being was small, maybe the size of a 12-year-old child, and it looked scared. The crystal being saw Jake and froze. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then the young alien spoke in perfect English. "Please help me," it said. "They want to hurt me." Jake lowered his gun. "Who wants to hurt you?" "The rebels. They say I am weak. They say I should not rule." The alien child's skin pulsed with nervous light. "I am Kale. I am the prince." Before Jake could answer, more sounds came from below. Angry voices. The whine of energy weapons charging up. Red laser beams cut through the crystal around them. "Get behind me," Jake said, not thinking about why he was helping an alien prince he had just met. His training kicked in. Protect the innocent. That was what humans did. The rebels came over the hill fast. There were 5 of them, all crystal beings like Kale but bigger and older. Their skin glowed with angry red light. They carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. "Give us the weak prince," the leader said in the same strange way that they all seemed to speak English. "He brings shame to our people." "I don't think so," Jake said, raising his gun. It looked like a toy compared to their weapons, but it was all he had. The rebels laughed. "Soft flesh creature, you cannot stop us. Move aside or burn." Instead of moving, Jake did something the crystal beings did not expect. He threw a small grenade from his pack, not at them, but at the crystal ground beneath their feet. The explosion cracked the crystal surface. The rebels stumbled and fell as their footing disappeared. In that moment of confusion, Jake grabbed Kale and rolled behind a crystal formation. "Stay low," Jake said. "I'll handle this." For the next 10 minutes, Jake used every trick he had learned in military training. The rebels had better weapons, but they had never fought a human before. Jake moved in ways they did not expect. He used the crystal formations for cover. He made noise in one place and attacked from another. When it was over, the rebels were retreating down the hill. Jake had only fired 6 shots, but each one had found its mark. Not to kill, but to disable their weapons and make them think twice about fighting. Kyle stared at Jake with wide eyes. The young prince's skin was now glowing with soft blue light instead of nervous flashing. "You saved me," Kale said quietly. "You protected me when you did not have to." Jake helped the prince stand up. "That's what we do. We help each other." Kyle looked at Jake with an expression the human could not quite understand. There was wonder in those crystal eyes, and something else, something that made Jake feel strange. "You are strong," Kale said. "You are kind. You are what I have been looking for." The prince took a deep breath. "Father." The word hit Jake like a physical blow. Father. This alien child had just called him father. Jake opened his mouth to correct the mistake, but something in Kale's eyes stopped him. In the distance, more ships were coming. These ones were different. They moved with grace and power. The prince's people, coming to find him. "We should go to them," Kale said, still looking at Jake with that strange expression. "The court must meet you." Jake had a feeling his life had just become very complicated, but looking at the young prince who had called him father, he found he did not mind as much as he should have. The royal ships landed around Jake and Kale like giant flowers made of light. Each ship was different, shaped from crystal that bent and moved like it was alive. Soldiers poured out, but these were not like the rebels Jake had fought. These crystal beings wore armor that sparkled like diamonds. Their weapons were works of art that happened to be deadly. They moved with discipline and grace that spoke of centuries of training. The leader of the soldiers was tall and elegant. Her crystal skin showed patterns of gold and silver light. When she saw Kyle, relief flooded across her features. "Prince Kyle," she said, bowing deeply, "your mother was worried. The rebels took you from the garden." "Captain Lisa protected me," Kyle said, pointing at Jake. "He fought them off." The captain looked at Jake with new interest. "A flesh creature fought our enemies?" "He did more than fight them," Kale said proudly. "He saved me. He is strong and brave and kind." Jake felt uncomfortable with all the attention. "I just did what anyone would do. The kid was in trouble." "The kid," the captain repeated, testing the human word. "You speak of our prince as if he were your own child." "Well, he's not," Jake said quickly. "I mean, I just helped him out, that's all." Kale stepped closer to Jake. The young prince's skin was glowing brighter now, pulsing with patterns Jake had never seen before. "He is more than a helper," Kale said firmly. "He is my father." Every crystal being in the area went completely still. The captain's patterns of light stopped moving. The soldiers froze in place. Even the sound of the ships seemed to fade away. "Prince Kale," the captain said very carefully, "perhaps you are confused. The battle was frightening. Sometimes we say things we do not mean." "I mean it," Kale said. His voice was stronger now, more like a prince and less like a scared child. "This is my father. I claim him before witnesses." The silence stretched on and on. Jake looked around at the frozen crystal beings and felt like he had stepped into something much bigger than a simple rescue. Finally, the captain spoke. "We must return to the palace immediately. The queen must be told." The ride to the palace was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. The ship did not fly so much as flow through the air like liquid light. There were no seats, just curved areas where the crystal floor rose up to support them. Kyle sat close to Jake during the journey. The prince asked dozens of questions about Earth and humans and what life was like among the stars. Jake found himself enjoying the conversation more than he expected. "Do human fathers teach their sons to fight?" Kale asked. "Sometimes," Jake said. "Mostly we teach them to think. Fighting is usually the last choice." "The rebels do not think," Kale said sadly. "They only want to destroy what they do not understand." Jake was starting to piece together the situation. This world was in the middle of a civil war. The rebels thought the royal family was weak, and somehow Jake had become part of the royal family. The palace appeared in the distance like a mountain made of pure light. It rose from the crystal plane in spirals and curves that hurt to look at directly. Streams of energy flowed around it like rivers in the sky. "It's beautiful," Jake said without thinking. "Father likes our home," Kale said happily. The word father still made Jake uncomfortable, but he was starting to get used to it. They landed in a courtyard that could have held 10 football fields. Crystal beings in elaborate robes were waiting for them. Their light patterns were more complex than the soldiers, showing rank and importance in ways Jake did not understand yet. "The court is assembled," the captain said. "They will want to hear what happened." Jake was led through corridors that defied physics. The walls curved in directions that should not exist. Light came from everywhere and nowhere. Sometimes Jake felt like he was walking on the ceiling. The throne room was the most impressive thing Jake had ever seen. It was shaped like the inside of a huge crystal geode. The walls were covered in formations that sang with musical tones when the light hit them just right. At the center of the room sat Queen Lysara. Jake had expected someone impressive, but the queen was beyond impressive. She was magnificent and terrifying at the same time. Her crystal skin showed patterns of every color Jake had ever seen, and some he had no names for. Light flowed around her like a living crown. When she looked at Jake, he felt like she could see right through him. Her eyes were ancient and intelligent and completely alien. This was a being who had ruled for centuries and could rule for centuries more. "Approach," the queen said. Her voice was like music played on instruments made of starlight. Jake walked forward, very aware that hundreds of crystal beings were watching his every move. Their light patterns flickered with curiosity and concern. "You are the flesh creature who protected my son," the queen said. It was not a question. "Yes, Your Majesty. I'm Captain Jake Martinez of the Earth Exploration Service." "Jake Martinez," the queen repeated, testing his name. "My son tells an interesting story about you." Kale stepped forward from behind Jake. In the formal setting of the throne room, the young prince looked smaller and more fragile than before, but his voice was clear and strong. "Mother," Kale said, "I present my father to the court." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Every crystal being in the room went completely silent. Not just quiet, absolutely silent. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in the sudden absence of sound. The queen's light patterns shifted to colors Jake had never seen before. When she spoke, her voice was very carefully controlled. "Kale, my son, you understand the significance of what you have just said?" "Yes, Mother. I claim this human as my father before the assembled court. I ask for their recognition of this bond." Jake wanted to say something, to explain that this was all a mistake, but something in the way everyone was looking at him made him stay quiet. An old crystal being stepped forward from the side of the room. His light patterns were deep blue and purple, ancient and complex. This had to be someone important. "I am Vex, advisor to the crown," he said to Jake. "Young prince, you realize that under our laws, the claiming of parentage is sacred. It cannot be undone once spoken before the court." "I know the law, Advisor Vex," Kael said. "And you, human Jake Martinez," Vex continued. "Do you accept this claim? Do you understand what it means?" Jake looked around the room. Every crystal being was staring at him. The Queen's expression was unreadable. Kael looked hopeful and scared at the same time. "I'm not sure I understand any of this," Jake said honestly. "But if Kael needs a father, and he wants me to be that father, then yes, I accept." The silence that followed was even deeper than before. Then slowly, one by one, the members of the court began to glow brighter. Their light patterns shifted to new configurations that pulsed in rhythm with each other. Advisor Vex nodded solemnly. "The court recognizes the bond. Prince Kael has claimed Jake Martinez as his father. Jake Martinez has accepted this claim. Under our ancient laws, this makes him consort to the Queen and co-ruler of our realm." Jake's eyes went wide. "Co-ruler? Wait, I didn't agree to that part." Queen Lysara stood up from her throne. When she moved, the light in the room seemed to bend around her. She was beautiful and dangerous and clearly not happy about this development. "The law is the law," she said coldly. "My son has chosen you. The court has accepted you. You are now part of our royal family, whether you intended it or not." She stepped closer to Jake, and he could feel the power radiating from her like heat from a furnace. "But understand this, human," she continued. "You may have the title, but you have not earned it. You will prove yourself worthy of my son's trust, or you will face consequences you cannot imagine." Jake looked at Kyle, who was glowing with happiness despite his mother's obvious anger. The young prince had taken a huge risk by claiming Jake as his father. The least Jake could do was try to live up to that trust. "I'll do my best, Your Majesty," Jake said. "I won't let him down." The Queen studied Jake for a long moment. Then she returned to her throne. "We shall see," she said. "Advisor Vex will explain your new duties and responsibilities. Guards will show you to your quarters. Tomorrow you begin learning what it means to be royal." As Jake was led from the throne room, he heard Kael running to catch up with him. "Father," the prince said happily, "you will like living in the palace. There is so much I want to show you." Jake realized his simple survey mission had become the adventure of a lifetime. He just hoped he would survive it. They walked down the hill together, human and alien, toward whatever came next. Jake's new quarters in the palace were larger than his entire apartment back on Earth. The walls were made of living crystal that changed color based on his mood. When he was confused, they showed swirling patterns of blue and gray. When he was frustrated, they flashed red and orange. Right now, they were showing a lot of red. "I still don't understand the marriage part," Jake said to Advisor Vex, who was trying to explain royal protocol for the third time that morning. "It is not marriage as your people understand it," Vex said patiently. "When Prince Kael claimed you as father, you became bound to our royal line. This makes you consort to the Queen by law, but it does not require romantic attachment. So I'm married but not married." "You are family," Vex said simply. "Family is more important than marriage to our people." Jake rubbed his forehead. After 3 days in the palace, he was starting to understand why the Queen looked so stressed all the time. Being royal was complicated. A soft chime sounded, and Kael appeared in the doorway. The young prince had a habit of making the crystal walls transparent when he wanted to visit. Privacy was a different concept here. "Father, are you ready for training?" Kael asked excitedly. Jake had started teaching Kael basic human combat techniques, not because he wanted the prince to fight, but because Kael had asked to learn. The young crystal being was fascinated by how humans solved problems. "Let's go to the practice room," Jake said. The practice room was a large circular space with walls that could become any environment needed for training. Today, Jake had set it to look like a rocky canyon with lots of places to hide. "Remember what I taught you about thinking ahead?" Jake said as they took their positions. "Your enemy will do what seems logical to them. If you can figure out what that is, you can be ready for it." Kale nodded seriously. The prince's light patterns had changed over the past few days. They were stronger now, more focused. Jake was not sure why. They began with simple exercises. Jake would hide, and Kale had to find him using only his wits, not his light powers. Then they switched, and Jake tried to hide from someone who could literally see through walls. "You are getting better at this," Kale said after successfully tracking Jake through 3 different hiding spots. "You're getting better too," Jake replied. "Your light control is much stronger than when I first met you." Kale's patterns shifted to something Jake had learned meant embarrassment. "I was weak before. The rebels were right about that." "No," Jake said firmly. "You were untrained. There's a difference. Weakness is giving up. You never gave up." Before Kale could respond, alarms started sounding throughout the palace. The crystal walls flashed urgent red patterns that hurt Jake's eyes. Advisor Vex's voice echoed from the communication crystals. "All royal family members to the command center immediately. We are under attack." Jake and Kale ran through corridors filled with rushing palace guards. The command center was chaos when they arrived. Dozens of crystal beings were working at stations that looked like they were grown rather than built. Queen Lysara stood at the center, directing the defense. "Report," she commanded as Jake and Kale approached. "Rebel forces have taken the northern crystal mines," Captain Lisa said. "They have weapons we have never seen before. Our defenses cannot stop them." Images appeared in the air above the command stations. Jake could see the battle happening in real time. Rebel ships were firing beams that cut through the royal forces like they were made of paper. "Those are human weapons," Jake said without thinking. Everyone in the command center turned to look at him. Queen Lysara's expression was dangerous. "Explain," she commanded. Jake studied the images more carefully. "Those beam patterns, the way the ships move, that's human military technology. But it's older than what we use now, maybe 20 or 30 years out of date." "How would rebels get human weapons?" Kyle asked. "They wouldn't," Jake said grimly, "unless other humans gave them those weapons." The Queen's light patterns shifted to colors that Jake had learned meant extreme anger. "You are saying your people are involved in this war? Some humans, maybe. But not all of us. I had never heard of your world before I crashed here." Another alarm sounded. More images appeared showing rebel forces advancing on 3 fronts. The palace defenses were holding, but barely. "We need to evacuate the civilians from the outer districts," Queen Lysara said. "Captain Lisa, take half the guard and—" "Wait," Jake interrupted. He knew he was taking a big risk speaking up in a war council, but he had an idea. "Your Majesty, I've been studying your tactical reports. The rebels always attack the same way. They hit hard and fast, then retreat when you bring up reinforcements." "Yes," the Queen said impatiently. "What is your point?" "They're fighting like humans, which means we can beat them like humans." Jake gestured to the tactical display. "Give me a small force and let me show you how humans really fight." "Absolutely not," Queen Lysara said immediately. "You are not a military commander. You are barely a member of this family." "Mother," Kyle said quietly. "Father has good ideas. His training has made me stronger. Perhaps he can make our forces stronger too." Jake could see the Queen struggling with the decision. She did not trust him. But her conventional tactics were not working. "I will not risk my best soldiers on an untested strategy," she said finally. "Then give me the worst soldiers," Jake said. "Give me the ones who are too young or too old or too scared to fight in the main battle. Let me show you what they can do." The Queen stared at Jake for a long moment. Around the command center, crystal beings waited to see what she would decide. "Very well," she said. "You will take a squad of junior guards and attempt to retake the Eastern Supply Depot. If you succeed, we will discuss expanding your role. If you fail, I won't fail," Jake said with more confidence than he felt. 2 hours later, Jake found himself leading 12 young crystal beings through the hills outside the palace. They were all volunteers from the junior guard, soldiers who had not yet seen real combat. "Remember," Jake told them as they approached the rebel-held depot, "we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to win a smart fight. Humans are weak compared to your people, so we learn to use our brains instead of our strength." The depot was a cluster of storage buildings built into a crystal cliff. Rebel guards patrolled the area with human weapons and crystal armor. They looked confident and well prepared. Traditional Zephyrian tactics would be a direct assault, Jake explained to his small team. "Overwhelm them with light and power. But look at their positions. They're ready for that kind of attack." Instead, Jake led his team around the depot to approach from an unexpected direction. They spent an hour setting up positions that the rebels could not see. "When I give the signal," Jake said, "half of you create a light show over there." He pointed to an empty area away from the depot. "Make it look like a major attack is coming from that direction. The rebels will move to defend against it." "And then?" asked one of the young guards. "Then the rest of us walk in the back door while they're not looking." The plan worked perfectly. The rebels saw the light show and thought a large force was attacking from the east. They moved most of their guards to face the fake threat. Jake and 6 guards slipped into the depot through the undefended rear entrance. They disabled the guards inside without firing a shot, using stun weapons instead of the deadly beams the rebels expected. By the time the rebels realized they had been tricked, Jake's team controlled the entire depot. The fake attack from the east became a real attack that trapped the remaining rebels between 2 forces. "How did you know they would fall for it?" one of the young guards asked as they secured the area. "Because they're thinking like humans," Jake explained. "And humans have patterns. Once you understand the patterns, you can predict what they'll do next." The communication crystal on Jake's belt activated. Queen Lysara's voice came through clearly. "Jake Martinez, report your status." "Mission accomplished, Your Majesty. The depot is secure, and we captured 15 rebels. No casualties on our side." There was a long pause before the Queen responded. "Return to the palace immediately. Bring your prisoners for questioning." During the trip back to the palace, Kyle stayed close to Jake. The young prince's light patterns showed excitement and pride. "You did it, Father," Kale said. "You showed them that humans are strong in their own way." "We did it together," Jake corrected. "Your people are brave. They just needed to learn a different way of fighting." Back at the palace, Jake delivered his prisoners to the royal interrogators. But one thing the rebels said during questioning bothered him. "You cannot stop what is coming," one of the captured rebels had said. "The Sky Mother will cleanse this world of weakness." Sky Mother. That sounded like another human was involved in this war. And if humans were supplying weapons to the rebels, the situation was much more dangerous than anyone realized. That night, as Jake was reviewing tactical reports in his quarters, Kale came to visit. "Father," the prince said, settling into a chair that adjusted itself to his crystal form. "May I ask you something personal?" "Of course." "Did you ever want children? Before you came here, I mean." Jake thought about it. "I always thought I might have kids someday, but I was focused on my career, exploring new worlds. I thought there would be time for a family later." "And now?" Jake looked at Kale's glowing form and felt something warm in his chest. "Now I think maybe the family finds you when you're ready for it." Kale's light patterns shifted to something that looked like happiness. "I am glad I found you, Father. even if it was by accident. "Me too," Jake said, and realized he meant it. Outside the palace windows, the crystal world glowed in the alien night. Somewhere out there, rebels with human weapons were planning their next attack. Jake had won one small battle, but the war was far from over, and he was beginning to suspect that the real enemy was not the rebels at all, but whoever was giving them those weapons. Another human who had very different ideas about what to do with a crystal world full of light. Jake knew something was wrong the moment he saw the transmission. The captured rebels had been carrying a communication device that palace technicians finally managed to decode. The message that came through was in perfect English. "Phase 3 is approved. Eliminate the royal family and prepare for harvesting operations. The hybrid must not be allowed to reach maturity. Commander Cross sends her regards." Commander Cross. Jake had heard that name before, back during his military training days. Helena Cross had been a legend in the Earth Defense Forces, brilliant, ruthless, and completely dedicated to human superiority in the galaxy. Jake brought the message to Queen Lysara immediately. She read it with growing alarm, her light patterns shifting through colors that meant fear and rage. "This Commander Cross," the Queen said, "you know of her?" "I know her reputation. She's human military, but not the kind who follows rules. If she's here, then this isn't just a civil war anymore." Before the Queen could respond, explosions echoed through the palace. Not the distant sound of battle, but close impacts that shook the crystal walls. "They're attacking the palace directly," Captain Lisa reported as she rushed into the throne room. "Multiple assault ships, moving faster than anything we've seen before." Jake looked at the tactical displays showing rebel forces surrounding the palace. The attack patterns were too coordinated, too professional. This was not the work of angry locals anymore. "Your Majesty," Jake said urgently, "we need to evacuate Kale. If they're targeting him specifically, the palace isn't safe anymore." "I will not abandon my people," Queen Lysara said firmly. "You don't have to abandon them. But Kale needs to survive this. He's the future of your people." More explosions, closer now. Through the crystal walls, Jake could see attack ships landing in the palace courtyards. Human soldiers in advanced armor were pouring out, working alongside crystal rebels. "Where is my son?" the Queen demanded. "In the training room," Captain Lisa reported. "He was practicing when the attack began." Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. "The training room is in the outer section. They'll reach it first." Without waiting for permission, Jake ran from the throne room. Behind him, he could hear Queen Lysara shouting orders to her guards, but he did not stop to listen. The corridors of the palace were chaos. Crystal beings rushed past, carrying weapons and supplies. Emergency lights flashed in patterns Jake had learned meant extreme danger. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear the sound of human voices shouting military commands. Jake reached the training room just as rebel forces were breaking down the main entrance. Through the transparent walls, he could see Kale hiding behind a piece of practice equipment. The young prince looked terrified, but determined. Jake had two choices. He could try to sneak Kale out through the back exits, or he could try to fight his way through the rebels. But as he watched, more enemy soldiers appeared at the rear exits too. They had planned this perfectly. There was a third choice, but it was dangerous. Jake activated the emergency controls for the training room. The walls became solid and opaque, cutting off the rebels' view of the interior. Then he opened a communication channel to Kale. "Son, can you hear me?" "Father!" Kale's voice was full of relief. "I am trapped. There are too many of them." "Listen to me carefully. Remember what I taught you about using your advantages. You have powers they don't understand. Use them. But I am not strong enough to fight so many enemies. You don't need to fight them all. You just need to do something they don't expect." Jake began talking Kale through a plan. It was risky, but it might work. The rebels were battering at the training room walls, but the palace's defensive systems were holding for now. While Jake coached his adopted son, explosions continued to rock the palace. The rebels were pushing deeper into the royal sections. Time was running out. "I think I understand, Father," Kale said, "but what if I am not strong enough?" "You are stronger than you know. I've seen what you can do when you stop doubting yourself. Trust me." Jake watched through the security monitors as Kale stepped out from behind his hiding place. The young prince's light patterns were different than Jake had ever seen them before. Instead of the usual blue and white, Kyle was glowing with gold and silver patterns that seemed to pulse with power. The rebels broke through the training room walls just as Kyle raised his hands. What happened next amazed everyone, including Jake. Instead of firing light beams at the rebels, Kale did something else entirely. The human weapons the rebels were carrying suddenly stopped working. Their armor powered down. Even their communication devices went silent. "What did you do?" Jake asked through the communication channel. "I reached into their machines and turned them off," Kale said, sounding surprised at himself. "I did not know I could do that." The rebels were shouting in confusion as their technology failed, but they still had numbers and training. Jake knew Kale could not hold them off forever. "Can you get to the emergency transport pad on the roof?" Jake asked. "I think so. But Father, where are you?" "I'm coming to get you. Stay hidden until I arrive." Jake ran through the palace toward the emergency transport pad, fighting his way past confused rebels whose weapons kept failing mysteriously. It seemed like Kale's new ability affected all human technology in the area. When Jake reached the roof, he found Kale waiting by a small crystal ship. The young prince looked exhausted but proud. "Father, I did what you said. I used my advantages." "You did great, son. Now we need to get out of here before they regroup." But as they started toward the ship, a voice stopped them cold. "I don't think so, Captain Martinez." Jake turned to see a human woman in advanced military armor standing at the other end of the roof. She was tall and confident, with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much war. This had to be Commander Helena Cross. "So you're the human who's been playing house with the aliens," Helena said as she approached. Her weapon was aimed directly at Jake. "I have to admit, I didn't expect to find another human here." "Commander Cross, I presume," Jake said, stepping protectively in front of Kale. "That's right, and you're the idiot who's been interfering with my operation." Helena's voice was cold and professional. "Did you really think you could adopt an alien prince and play happy family?" "Kale is my son," Jake said firmly. Helena laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Your son? Look at him, Martinez. He's not human. He never will be. And worse, he's a hybrid." "What do you mean, hybrid?" "Oh, they didn't tell you?" Helena smiled cruelly. "Your precious alien prince is half human. His real father was a human explorer named Alex Bennett. That makes the boy a perfect weapon against both our species." Jake felt the world shift around him. Kale was half human? That explained the strange abilities, the way he learned human concepts so quickly. "You're lying," Jake said. But even as he spoke, pieces were falling into place. "Am I?" "Ask yourself why he can disable human technology. Ask why he speaks perfect English. Ask why he bonded with you so quickly." Helena raised her weapon higher. "The boy is an abomination that could destroy the balance between humans and aliens forever." Behind Jake, Kyle's light patterns were fluctuating wildly. The young prince was hearing the truth about his heritage for the first time. "Father," Kale said quietly, "is what she says true? Am I half human?" Jake turned to look at Kale. The boy's alien features suddenly seemed more familiar. The shape of his eyes, the way he held his head, there were human elements Jake had not noticed before. "I don't know," Jake said honestly, "but it doesn't matter. You're my son regardless of who your biological father was." "How touching," Helena said. "But this ends now. The boy is too dangerous to live." Helena raised her weapon to fire, but something extraordinary happened. Instead of cowering, Kale stepped forward. His light patterns suddenly stabilized into something Jake had never seen before. Perfect geometric patterns that pulsed with controlled power. "You will not hurt my father," Kyle said, and his voice carried harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. Helena pulled the trigger, but her weapon would not fire. In fact, every piece of human technology on the roof suddenly stopped working. Helena's armor powered down. Her communication gear went silent. Even the lights in her helmet went dark. "Impossible," Helena whispered. "No alien can affect our technology like that." "I am not only alien," Kale said calmly. "I am both, and that makes me stronger than either." Jake watched in amazement as his adopted son took control of the situation. Kyle was learning to use his hybrid nature as an advantage rather than seeing it as a weakness. "We need to go," Jake said. "The other rebels will figure out what happened soon." As they climbed into the crystal ship, Helena called after them. "This isn't over, Martinez. The boy will never be safe." "Neither of our species will accept him." "Then we'll make them accept him," Jake called back. As their ship lifted off from the palace roof, Jake could see the full scope of the battle below. Rebel forces had taken most of the palace, but they were in chaos now that their human weapons and equipment had failed. "Father," Kale said as he piloted the ship with impressive skill, "what Commander Cross said about my real father, do you think Mother knows?" "I think your mother knows a lot of things she hasn't told us yet," Jake said. "We need to find her and get some answers." "And then?" Jake looked at his hybrid son, this remarkable young being who was both human and alien and somehow more than either. "Then we figure out how to end this war and build a future where beings like you can exist safely." Kale's light patterns shifted to something that looked like determination mixed with hope. "Together, together," Jake promised. Below them, the crystal world continued to glow in the alien night. The war was far from over, but Jake felt like they finally understood what they were really fighting for. Not just to save the royal family or stop the rebels, but to prove that two species could become one. The ancient temple of Zephyria rose from the crystal plains like a mountain of pure light. Jake had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying. The building was older than human civilization, carved from a single massive crystal that pulsed with energy from deep within the planet. "This is where it all began," Queen Lasara said as their ship approached the temple, "where our people first learned to control light itself." Jake, Kale, and the Queen had escaped the palace 3 days ago. Since then, they had been gathering loyal forces and trying to understand Helena Cross's true plan. What they discovered was worse than anyone had imagined. "She is not just trying to control our world," Advisor Vex explained as they landed near the temple entrance. "She wants to use our crystal technology to create hybrid soldiers, an army that combines human adaptability with Zephyrian power." "And the only way to do that," Queen Lasara added grimly, "is to capture Kale and study how his mixed heritage works." Jake looked at his adopted son. Over the past few days, Kale's abilities had grown stronger. The young prince could now disable entire groups of human weapons with a thought. He could also do something even more impressive. He could communicate with both humans and Zephyrians in ways that went beyond simple language. "The temple will protect us," Kale said confidently. "The old stories say it responds only to those with pure hearts." "Let's hope the old stories are right," Jake muttered. They made their way through the temple's outer chambers, followed by 24 loyal guards. The crystal walls here were different from those in the palace. These crystals were ancient and wild, showing patterns that hurt to look at directly. Deep in the temple, they found what they were looking for: the heart chamber, where the most powerful crystal formations on the planet came together. It was here that Zephyrian civilization had begun thousands of years ago. It was also where Helena Cross was waiting for them. "I wondered when you would come here," Helena said calmly. She stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by rebel forces and human soldiers. "This place calls to hybrids, doesn't it, boy?" Kyle stepped forward, his light patterns bright with anger. "You will not use this sacred place for your evil plans." "Evil?" Helena laughed. "I'm trying to save both our species. Humans and Zephyrians will eventually fight each other for control of the galaxy, but if we combine our strengths, we can rule together." "Under human leadership, of course," Jake said. "Of course. We're the ones with the vision to make it work." Queen Lysara moved to stand beside Jake and Kale. "You understand nothing about us. We are not a species to be controlled or improved. We are complete as we are." "Complete?" Helena gestured to the rebel Zephyrians standing with her forces. "Tell that to your own people, who think you're too weak to lead them." The rebel leader, a tall Zephyrian with dark red light patterns, stepped forward. "Queen Lysara has forgotten the old ways. She makes peace with weak flesh creatures instead of conquering them as our ancestors did." Jake felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. "The old ways," he repeated. "Vex, you said this temple is where Zephyrian civilization began. What exactly happened here?" Advisor Vex's ancient light patterns shifted to something that looked like memory. "According to the oldest records, our people found this place when we first achieved spaceflight. The crystals here taught us to manipulate light and energy, but the records are incomplete. Much knowledge was lost." "Not lost," Helena said with satisfaction. "Hidden. Do you want to know what your precious ancestors really were, Alien Queen? They were created by the same beings who created humanity. We're sister species, designed to eventually find each other." "That's impossible," Queen Lysara said, but Jake could hear doubt in her voice. Helena walked over to the largest crystal formation at the center of the chamber. When she placed her hand on it, the entire room filled with images and sounds. Jake saw scenes of an ancient civilization, unlike anything in human or Zephyrian records. Beings of incredible power and intelligence, working with technologies that bent reality itself. He saw them seeding worlds across the galaxy with two different experiments, one that would become humanity, one that would become the Zephyrians. "The Builders," Helena explained, "created us as complementary species. Humans for adaptability and expansion, Zephyrians for stability and energy manipulation. They expected us to eventually meet and join together." "And you think that gives you the right to rule over us?" Kale asked. "I think it gives us the responsibility to fulfill our destiny," Helena replied. "But not as equals. Humans have spread across hundreds of worlds while you stayed on one. We're clearly the dominant partner." Jake was studying the images more carefully. Something about them bothered him. "These aren't records of the past," he realized suddenly. "They're instructions for the future." Helena smiled coldly. "Very good, Captain Martinez. The Builders left instructions for what should happen when we finally met. Humanity was meant to provide leadership and expansion. The Zephyrians were meant to provide the power to make it possible. And the hybrids?" Queen Lysara asked. "The hybrids were meant to be the bridge between species. Living proof that we could work together." Helena looked directly at Kyle, but only under proper guidance. Kyle's light patterns suddenly flared brighter than Jake had ever seen them. "You want to use me as a weapon?" "I want to use you as a symbol," Helena corrected. "With your abilities, we could create an army of human Zephyrian hybrids, perfect soldiers who combine the best of both species." "Over my dead body," Jake said. "That can be arranged," Helena replied, signaling to her soldiers. The battle that followed was unlike anything Jake had experienced. Human weapons fired energy beams, while Zephyrian rebels attacked with pure light. The ancient crystals of the temple resonated with the conflict, amplifying every blast and making the air itself dangerous to breathe. Jake found himself fighting beside Queen Lysara, their different combat styles somehow working together perfectly. She attacked with controlled beams of devastating light, while he used human tactics to outflank and confuse the enemy. But the real battle was happening in the center of the chamber, where Kyle faced Helena Cross alone. "You cannot win, boy," Helena said as she advanced on the young prince. "I have decades of combat experience and the finest human technology. I have something you will never understand," Kyle replied calmly. "And what's that?" "A family that loves me for who I am, not what I can be used for." Kale raised his hands, and something extraordinary happened. Instead of attacking Helena directly, he reached out to every piece of technology in the chamber, human and Zephyrian alike. But instead of simply turning it off, he did something much more complex. He reprogrammed it. Jake watched in amazement as human weapons began firing on rebel forces instead of loyalists. Zephyrian light crystals started amplifying Queen Lysara's attacks instead of the rebels' beams. Even Helena's advanced armor turned against her, locking her in place. "Impossible," Helena gasped. "No hybrid should be that powerful." "I am not just any hybrid," Kale said. "I am the child of two species who chose love over conquest. That makes me stronger than anything you could create in a laboratory." The battle was over in minutes. With their technology turned against them, the rebels and human soldiers had no choice but to surrender. But Helena was not finished. As the fighting died down, she activated one final device, a bomb that would destroy the entire temple and everyone in it. "If I cannot control the future," she shouted, "then no one can." The bomb began its countdown. 10 seconds. Not enough time to evacuate the chamber. Jake looked at Kyle and saw the same thought in the young prince's glowing eyes. Together they reached for the ancient builder crystal at the center of the chamber. What happened next was impossible to describe in simple terms. Jake felt his mind expand beyond anything he had ever experienced. Through the crystal, he could see the connections between all living things in the galaxy. He could feel the vast network of consciousness that the builders had left behind, and he could see their true purpose. The builders had not created humans and Zephyrians to rule over each other. They had created them to grow beyond their creator's limitations, to become something new and better. With Kale's hybrid abilities amplifying his own human adaptability, Jake reached into the bomb and simply convinced it to stop working. Not through technology, but through pure will and understanding. The countdown stopped at 0, but there was no explosion. Helena stared at them in shock. "What did you do?" "What we were always meant to do," Jake said. "We chose cooperation over domination." In the weeks that followed, everything changed on Zephyria. The revelation that humans and Zephyrians were sister species created by the same ancient civilization ended the civil war overnight. Rebels who had fought for Zephyrian purity realized they were fighting against their own cosmic family. Helena Cross and her remaining forces were given a choice: leave Zephyria peacefully or face trial for war crimes. Most chose to leave, but some decided to stay and learn what real cooperation looked like. Jake found himself in a position he had never wanted, but now understood he was meant for. As Kale's adopted father and Queen Lysara's consort, he became the first human Zephyrian ambassador. His job was to help both species learn to work together as equals. "Do you ever regret it?" Queen Lysara asked him one evening as they watched Kale teaching other young hybrids in the palace gardens. "Your simple survey mission became a lifetime commitment you never chose." Jake thought about his old life among the stars, exploring empty worlds and filing reports that no one would remember. Then he looked at Kale, who was patiently helping a nervous half-human child learn to control her light abilities. "Some destinies choose us," Jake said finally. "The lucky ones get to embrace them." Kyle looked up from his teaching and waved at Jake. The young prince's light patterns showed pure happiness, the glow of someone who had found where they belonged in the universe. Jake waved back, knowing that sometimes the best adventures were the ones you never planned for. His unchosen destiny had led him to a family he never expected, and a future more wonderful than any he could have imagined. In the crystal sky above them, human and Zephyrian ships flew together on joint exploration missions, carrying the dream of the builders to other worlds and other species. The galaxy was a bigger place than anyone had imagined. But with two species working as one family, it was also a friendlier place. And in the palace gardens of Zephyria, a human father watched his alien son prepare the next generation for a future none of them could have predicted. But all of them had chosen to build together.